Hi everyone, my name's Ryan, and possessing this meme might get you thrown out of the country faster than you can say.
It's like legalized comedy. Yeah.
Do you remember JD Vance memes? If you're watching this channel, you probably do, but just in case you missed it, JD Vance memes are basically just funny edited images of Vice President JD Vance. They got really popular after Vance's spat with President Zelensky in the Oval Office. Since then, the Vance meme craze has died down a little bit, but that didn't stop a chubby, bald version of JD Vance from making its way to Norway, where it found its way onto the phone of 21-year-old Mads Mikkelson, not the same guy as the famous actor. This is where the trouble starts. Mr. Mikkelson was coming to the United States on vacation and was subject to an intense search at the airport. He was threatened with a fine if he didn't allow ICE officials to look through his phone. On his phone, officials found and questioned Mr. Mikkelson about two images. The first was an image of a wooden pipe. The other was a meme of JD Vance. I guess I should say, just for the record, that JD Vance memes and images of wooden pipes are both legal to possess in the United States as far as I'm aware. Mr. Mikkelson seems to be sure that what ultimately caused his detention and his being sent back to Norway was the JD Vance meme. The Department of Homeland Security is denying this and says that what ultimately caused his being sent back to Norway is that he admitted to having used drugs in the past. I think there could very well be a combination of factors at play here. ICE officials have an incredible amount of discretion when it comes to allowing or disallowing foreigners from entering the United States. If they don't want you coming in for really any reason, they will find a reason to not let you in. It's also unfortunately very common to hear stories of American law enforcement fishing for violations if they feel like you've slighted them in some way. Practically everyone I know has a story kind of like this, and it's one reason why whenever you read a guide for dealing with American law enforcement, it'll probably tell you to behave as deferentially as possible towards them while protecting your rights. If I were to guess what happened here just by synthesizing the stories of Mr. Mikkelson and DHS, I would say that Mr. Mikkelson was probably randomly selected for a phone screening, which led to an ICE officer seeing and being irritated by the JD Vance meme, which prompted a more intense investigation, which led to Mr. Mikkelson admitting that he had in the past used marijuana, which was reason enough to turn him away since marijuana is still illegal at the federal level in the United States. I don't know if this is what happened, and to be frank, we will probably never know the full story of why Mr. Mikkelson was actually sent back to Norway because, again, ICE officials can basically turn you away for looking at them funny. But isn't the fact that this even has to be a question pretty insane in and of itself? It's not like it would be out of line with how the Department of Homeland Security has been acting lately. DHS, a department that allegedly works for all Americans, not just conservatives, attacks liberals on social media. Other visitors to the United States have also been subject to bizarrely political treatment by DHS personnel. When an Australian man was detained, he was told that Trump is back in town. We're doing things the way that we always should have been doing them. An American lawyer representing a pro-Palestine protester was detained and questioned about his clients and asked to turn over his phone for inspection. This isn't even mentioning DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's insane press conference where she talked about using federal forces to liberate Los Angeles from socialists and its elected mayor and governor. You may have heard about this press conference because it's the same one that ended with a senator from California pinned to the ground in handcuffs.
Get up, 8 feet on my hands. Go ahead, put him behind my back.
All right, cool. One hand, lay flat, lay flat.
This is the weaponization of the DHS against political enemies. It's coming straight from the top, and I don't know if, given any of this, I feel willing to accept at face value DHS's statement on why Mr. Mikkelson was denied entry into the United States. Or, in the words of Dear Leader's press secretary,
when you have a totalitarian regime, you have to save face. I think any common sense, open-minded person knows the truth.
Hey, real quick, if you like my stuff, I'd appreciate you giving the video a like and comment. Subscribe if you want to see more. Okay, back to it. The American federal government is becoming increasingly weaponized against perceived enemies of the Trump administration, and I want to use the disputed case of Mr. Mikkelson and the undeniable weaponization of DHS to talk about all the ways in which the Trump administration is turning the federal government against our freedom of speech. The Trump administration has been very eager to come after student protesters. Rumiza Ozturk is a student at Tufts. She was abducted off the street by plainclothes ICE officers for writing a pro-Palestine op-ed. She was in jail for weeks until a court ordered her release because throwing someone in jail for writing an op-ed clearly violates the First Amendment. The judge in this case noted that there is absolutely no evidence that she had engaged in violence or advocated violence. She has no criminal record. He said that she has done nothing other than essentially attend her university and expand her contacts in her community. So that's great. You know, the obviously correct decision was reached. But was the goal here by DHS really to arrest someone that they thought was a danger to the country? Or was it to chill speech that the Trump administration just doesn't like, to make people afraid of saying things that the Trump administration just doesn't like? In the absence of literally any evidence that Ms. Ozturk did anything other than write an op-ed, it seems like her arrest had more to do with making an example out of someone than actually protecting the United States of America. Mahmoud Khalil is another prominent example of a Palestinian student protester targeted by DHS. He was a leader within the Palestine protest at Columbia University. His case is basically an object lesson in show me the man and I'll show you the crime. When he was first arrested without a warrant by ICE agents after Secretary of State Rubio attempted to revoke his green card by alleging his presence in the United States might harm U.S. foreign policy, a judge ruled that this was not constitutional. So the government found a new grounds to hold him by alleging his green card application was not accurate. When Mr. Khalil was finally released on bail, DHS released a bizarre statement claiming that the judge in the case was attempting to deny the results of the 2024 election. You've been hearing this little bit a lot lately, how whenever something doesn't go the way the Trump administration wants, they say it's denying the outcome of the 2024 election. I'm sorry we don't live in a dictatorship, folks. I'm sorry, that's not the way our system works. You can't just do anything you want because you're president. Of course, this is all just projection because they actually did deny the outcome of the 2020 election. Related to the Trump administration's attacks on student protesters are the attacks we've seen on universities and on grant recipients. It's been clear that going after universities has been a goal of the organized right wing in the United States for a while. JD Vance, speaking to our old friends at the National Conservatism Conference, the premier gathering for American conservatives that wake up every day and wish that they were born a European peasant, delivered a speech called "The Universities Are the Enemy." The right sees higher education as a hostile institution, which isn't really a surprise when you look at the voting patterns of people with and without a college education. So in order to attack higher education, the Trump administration has been demanding punishing concessions from universities that want to receive federal grant funding. One component of the demands that the Trump administration is making here of universities is a very vague requirement to maintain viewpoint diversity within departments. Consider for a moment that it would be the federal government run by the Trump administration determining if universities are in compliance with the federal government's demands here. I'm pretty worried that what this would be in effect is allowing the Trump administration a free hand in deciding what gets taught and by who at our nation's universities. Aside from all this, why is the federal government negotiating with universities like they're some conquered enemy? This is another common theme you'll see with the second Trump administration, sending lawyers to demand concessions from American institutions like law firms or universities, like their stepped villages receiving an emissary from the Great Khan. This weaponization of grant funding is worrying for freedom of speech reasons, of course, because the government is trying to condition funding on capitulating to the ideological demands of the Trump administration. But it also has the potential to really decimate U.S. science. It's important to remember whenever we hear about some ridiculous sounding program being funded by a government grant to dig a little deeper and to understand that valuable science can come from unexpected places. Drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy were made possible, for example, because a scientist was studying the spit of the Gila monster lizard. Can't you just imagine some Republican congressman yelling about the millions of dollars spent studying lizard spit? One of the more long-standing enemies of the Trump administration is the media and journalists. Donald Trump has threatened multiple times to have broadcasting licenses of news organizations he doesn't like suspended. He calls media organizations he doesn't like enemies of the people. None of this is new or uncommon. As I'm writing this, Trump has recently called a reporter at CNN who broke the story that a report exists showing Iran's nuclear facilities may not have been completely destroyed to be fired and thrown out like a dog. This administration has banned the Associated Press from the White House for refusing to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, while at the same time welcoming far-right conspiracy cranks. I assume this bit of petty newspeak feels about as silly as it must have felt to see the congressional cafeteria selling freedom fries back in 2003. Not satisfied with going after traditional media, Trump has bragged about bullying platforms like Facebook into changing their content moderation policies to be more favorable to him. Always eager to take things to a new low, Vice President Vance memes about social media fashion critics being deported. I think this last example is a great place to bring us back to the original point of this video, the case of Mr. Mikkelson and his alleged arrest and removal over a JD Vance meme. We don't know if that's really why it happened, and we probably never will know. I've given you my theory, but that's all it is, a theory. What we do know is that the Trump administration is incredibly soft. They take offense to everything and will use any excuse to lash out at our freedom of speech. Their aim is to either punish speech they don't like directly or make people so afraid that they never speak out in the first place. They've gone after universities. They've canceled scientific research for using words that they think are too woke sounding. They've weaponized the DHS. Cabinet officials threatened federal occupation and the removal of elected representatives. They aren't happy with any media that doesn't toe the party line. This administration is decidedly anti-free speech. What this whole JD Vance meme saga and really everything else that the Trump administration has undeniably done to attack our First Amendment rights shows is that this administration has an authoritarian nature. That's perfectly obvious at this point. But what it also shows is that this administration is fragile. They freak out over the smallest things. A confident, popular administration would not feel the need to suppress student protests, to go after universities, or to attack the media. If the administration we're dealing with had no authoritarian character, the very suggestion that someone could be denied at the border for a meme would be a late night joke, not the subject of serious speculation by major media outlets. That's how far we've gone. This administration is as unpopular as it's ever been. Less than 6 months in, Trump is already mired in controversy. His approval is slipping. He's underwater on every major issue. He's failed to lower prices. He's introduced massive uncertainty into the economy with tariffs. He's rattled some factions of his own base even by bombing Iran. This administration is authoritarian, but it's also very fragile and becoming more unpopular by the day. The mere possibility of someone not being allowed to enter this country because they possess dangerous memes should be frightening for anyone who cares about the freedom of speech. But it's also deeply embarrassing for the Trump administration that this might be over the line. It's legal to make fun of the vice president. Elon said comedy is legal again, guys. So this is my call to action. This might be the only time you're ever able to do politics via a meme. Create more Vance edits, share them, print them out, post them online, whatever you want. This is subversive and dangerous material that we're dealing with here. If the ego of this administration is so soft that they can get their feelings hurt by mean professors, student op-eds, the phrase Gulf of Mexico, or even fat, bald JD Vance, then I say you can have my JD Vance memes when you pry my JD Vance memes
from my cold, dead hands.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. See you next time.